Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Special show today because there will be a period where we will not be doing shows here in just a little bit. But again, special show because it is newsworthy during coaching season. And I said if there was news, we'd go live, and we've got an hour until the football game kicks off. The Houston Texans, who you people hate, against the great Mike Vrabel, who you people miss. We will be keeping our eyes on that one. And then, of course, the Rams and Chicago tonight as well. So enjoy all of that. But we are here today to talk about the Titans coaching search and the finalists that have been announced. And if you hear something in the background, it is my son watching Noodle and Pals over here in the background. He seems to be having a good time. But we have our finalists as far as the Titans coaching search is considered. And the finalist, it seems, keeps winding down and dwindling down because these guys get jobs elsewhere. So let's start with what we know, which is that yesterday, all of the insiders came out and they started telling us, hey, Matt Nagy is advanced to round 2. Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, has advanced to round 2. Kevin Stefanski, the former coach in Cleveland, had advanced to round 2. And that they still had McCarthy in the building for technically round 1. Now, there's a little ambiguity when it comes to McCarthy for number 1 versus McCarthy. You know, did he meet with them before? And we'll get to that in a second. But yesterday was interview number 1 for Big Mike. And then they're interviewing Robert Saleh and I believe Jonathan Gannon today. So they're both going to be, I believe Saleh is virtual. Gannon is in person. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that Jonathan Gannon is going to be the next head coach of the Titans. But when it comes to, and by the way, Time Out Let's Talk says, why won't you be doing shows? It's just, there's going to be a little period of time where I'm, got some family stuff going on that I'll be taking a break of tiny time, but we'll get to that later. But so let's start with reality, because again, yesterday, the finalists, and I say were announced, the team did not announce it, but all the insiders had the same info from Schefter to Diana to Paul to everybody, Albert Breer, everybody had the same info. And the same info was that those were going to be the guys. And there are a lot of you people out there that are like, you know what? I really, really like Stefanski. So hopefully it's Stefanski. And there are some of you out there that really, really like Jeff Hafley. So you're like, Hafley, okay, I could go with Hafley. There are not a lot of you out there that like Matt Nagy. Let's just call it how it is. Twitter is on fire because last night, Kevin Stefanski, visiting the Atlanta Falcons, agreed to become their coach. Take him off the list. Jeff Hafley is in Miami. And with John Eric Sullivan, the former Packer, as the general manager, a lot of people believe that Jeff Hafley is the favorite to be the next head coach in Miami. And so just like how Harbaugh visited the Giants before you were supposed to make your pitch on Harbaugh, just like Stefanski went to the Falcons before he was coming to visit you for a second time, it does look like, and it does quack like, the reality that Jeff Hafley is probably going to be the Dolphins head coach, and that'll probably get done today. And I know there's something about the Rooney Rule and everything else saying, oh, no, the Rooney Rule, you can't do this, you can't. I mean, look, if they agree to the deal with Hafley and then they interview Byron Leftwich, they'll figure it out. But if they want Hafley to be their coach and he's there today, they can essentially lock up Hafley as their coach. Which leaves you from the original finalist list, which was not including Salah because he had not had the first interview, and was not including McCarthy because it kind of feels like McCarthy's first interview was really the same as a finalist interview. If it's not that, then it's like, okay, well, you're stuck with Matt Nagy, or you're going to add to the finalist list. Now, Paul said, and his reporting was, it's going to be 3 to 5. As far as how many people are they going to bring in for the finalist interviews? He said 3 to 5. And again, originally it was supposed to be Stefanski. It was supposed to be Hafley. And again, Stefanski's off the board. I think Hafley's going to be off the board. So that would only leave one. If it's 3, that's Nagy. McCarthy, would he get a second interview? I mean, you can add him to the list. And then there's Salah, who we don't know if he'll progress from round 1 to round 2. But again, a lot of the local beat guys seem to really think that Salah to the Titans has legs. Both Easton Freeze on this show and TD said that that they think Salah will end up being the coach. So let me get to where I want to start, which is Matt Nagy. It looks like Matt Nagy is going to be the next coach of the Titans. I'm just going to call it how I see it. I have thought since they fired Brian Callahan, Matt Nagy was probably the most likely option to be the next head coach of the Titans. Then when they came out and they said that when they came out and Mike Borgonzi had his press conference and Mike Borgonzi said, hey, I think it's really important that the general manager have a good working relationship with the head coach. I immediately, that was early November, I said, I think Matt Nagy's going to be the next coach of the Titans. And maybe it could be a guy like Spagnuolo. Maybe it could be a guy like Peterson. Maybe it could be somebody that he's worked with before. I don't know. But it's probably going to be Nagy. Nagy, again, he kind of checks the boxes. He's got the experience. He's been a head coach before. And again, his head coaching tenureship in Chicago wasn't that bad. But it looks like it's going to be Nagy. It feels like it's going to be Nagy. Now, I have thought pretty much the whole time it was going to be Nagy, so this isn't anything new. But holy shit, you people are so fucking mad about the idea of Matt Nagy being the Titans coach. I told you guys when they put out interview requests to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, I said they're doing this for one of 2 reasons. They're either doing this because they want to be able to say they interviewed everybody so they can look at Amy and say, we interviewed everybody, Amy, and Matt Nagy's still our choice. Or so that they can look at you all and they can say, we interviewed everybody and Matt Nagy's our choice. I said, I don't think they were ever going to get Harbaugh, and I don't think they thought they were ever going to get Harbaugh. By the way, bonus points to me for saying, yeah, if you want Harbaugh, you have to give him total control of the organization, and you have to give him $20 million a year. And people said, oh, no, Jared, we can't pay him that kind of money. Andy Reid makes that kind of money. He's not Andy Reid. We can't do that. I'm like, right, but Andy Reid has a job. Harbaugh doesn't have a job, and Harbaugh has suitors. So you're going to have to win a bidding war with those guys. Oh, no, Jared, no, we don't want to pay. We don't have to give him control. He didn't have that in Baltimore. Yeah, did you see how it went down with the Giants? He accepted the job. Then at the end was like, whoa. I'm not reporting to that bozo general manager. Okay, fine. So, again, when it comes to Nagy, I think that they interviewed every Tom, Dick, and Harry because they knew they were going to hire Nagy the whole time, and they wanted to be able to look at you people, and they wanted to say, trust us. We interviewed them all, and Matt Nagy stood out. That's what I firmly believe. Now, I don't know how this is going to go over with Amy, and at the end of the day, Amy is calling the shots. I know that, again, she said Mike Borgonzi was going to lead the search. But it kind of feels like if there's anybody who can veto Mike Borgonzi wanting to hire Matt Nagy, it's Amy Adams Strunk. Now, let me say this, because I think there is a real possibility here that I don't like. And I'm just going to be blunt. And you people are going to celebrate if this happens. I think there's a chance that the negativity that is just spewing online as far as Matt Nagy is concerned could get Amy to veto the hire. I'm not saying that I know that Mike Borgonzi wants to hire Matt Nagy because I don't know that. I think that. And I've said, if Mike Borgonzi in his heart believes that Matt Nagy is a good coach, forget about what you people think. Forget about what people in Chicago think. Forget about all that. if in his heart he truly feels like Matt Nagy is a good coach, then I would argue that he should hire him. Again, like if he knows it, if he knows, the reason it didn't work in Chicago is because of Trubisky and because of Ryan Pace, the general manager, and Justin Fields, and he came back and said, oh my God, all these things in Chicago were such a mess, and here in Tennessee, we've got Cam Ward. He's not Trubisky. He's not Fields. He's going to be better than that. And if he thinks in his heart that Matt Nagy is a good coach, then he should hire Matt Nagy. Mike Borgonzi is paid millions of dollars, probably about $4 million a year, to make this type of decision. This, when you take a general manager job, and it is a real general manager job, which as of 2 weeks ago, he was promoted into a real general manager job. When you take a real general manager job, hiring the coach in conjunction with the owner, but hiring the coach and really either outright picking it yourself or emphasizing to the owner, this is the guy I think we need, is what you are paid to do. That is what a general manager is paid to do. Now, there's a lot of other parts of being general manager that apparently Rand Carthon didn't do very well either. You know, like running the entire operation and the organization, and whether that's PR or IT or equipment or field management. And again, Rand was too lazy, so they gave those things to Chad Brinker. But I think a general manager should be in charge of that. And I worked with a general manager who was in charge of that. But the things that really matter, like that are going to make or break a general manager's tenure, is who he hires as coach, who he decides to make his quarterback, and who he picks in the draft and signs in free agency. That's what really matters. And that's what he's paid millions of dollars to you to do. You people, and this includes me too, by the way, you people are not paid millions of dollars to know every little thing about all these coaching candidates. I am going to venture to guess you people that do not like Matt Nagy, and boy, there are a lot of you out there that don't like Matt Nagy. You people do not know Matt Nagy. I don't know Matt Nagy, and I'm not going to pretend like I do know Matt Nagy. He knows Matt Nagy. Again, general managers, for some reason in today's era, don't really get second chances. So if he hires Matt Nagy and Cam Ward fails, then he's fired, Nagy's fired, and they move on from Cam. His career's over. So once that happens, I mean, he's taking a risk to go hire Matt Nagy if that's what he wants to do. Again, if he believes in his heart, this is why they pay him $4 million a year, and this is why they don't pay you $4 million a year. If in his heart he thinks this guy can coach, if in his heart he thinks this is the right guy for Cam Ward, if in his heart he knows the organization that I dream of building, that I was brought here to build, centers around Cam Ward and Matt Nagy, then I think he should do it. And again, if you're Amy, and on one hand, you've got a screaming fan base who is going to hate this hire. And I've already gone through this because you people hated Mike McCarthy and never gave him credit when he was winning. Never gave him credit for the good stuff. Always blamed him for everything you didn't like. And always was on his ass. Even though he took the worst team in the league, they went 9-7, 9-7, went to the playoffs, won a playoff game. You people didn't care. And Nagy will be the same way because you'll hate Matt Nagy. Anything good that happens to the Titans short of a Super Bowl will be, well, Cam did that, and whoever we draft 4th overall did that, not Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy's holding him back. I'm telling you. That, I am convinced, is likely to happen. She listened to you people on the Malarkey stuff because she really liked Mike McCarthy, and for 2 years, Mike McCarthy kept getting positive results. And in the end, she fired him. because the fans were okay with it. I know J-Rob wanted him out. I don't know if the fans looked at it the way I looked at it. And I'm a Titan fan. But if the fans looked at it the way I looked at it, where I'm like, no, I'm not firing the coach who just took the team to the playoffs and won a playoff game. Fuck you, figure it out. If the fans looked at it like that, I don't know that Amy would have made that move. So we've got a fan base that is ready to storm the Bastille when it comes to the hiring of Matt Nagy. We've got a general manager who it looks like believes in Matt Nagy. We know they're close. Matt Nagy helped Mike Borgonzi, according to The Athletic, prepare for general manager interviews when he was an assistant general manager. I asked Mike Borgonzi straight up 2 weeks ago about Matt Nagy specifically, not guys you've worked with in the past, not generic. I said, the perception of Matt Nagy is that he was not a good coach in Chicago, and he's not a good coach now. But you know Matt Nagy. We don't know Matt Nagy. What do you think of Matt Nagy? And he said Matt Nagy, he thought, did a good job in Chicago, and he thought did some really good things in Kansas City when he came back. So he does think Matt Nagy's a good coach. If he wants to hire him, if I owned the team and I hired Mike Borgonzi to be the general manager, and Mike Borgonzi said to me, this is the guy I want, and I own the Titans, I would let him do it. Even though, again, just looking at resumes and gut feelings and everything else, I'd rather have Arthur Smith be the coach than Matt Nagy, and I'd rather Mike McCarthy be the head coach than Matt Nagy. And I don't know any of those guys. I mean, I know Arthur a little bit, but I don't really know those guys from a jar of Vicks. But that's just how I personally feel about it. Again, I put the chart up there where it's all these coaches. Now, Stefanski's obviously off the board, but I mean, McCarthy, just his resume dwarfs all these other guys, Matt Nagy included. But if I owned the team, now I'd still have to meet with these guys. But if I met the team, if I owned the team, and I had hired Mike Borgonzi and was paying Mike Borgonzi millions of dollars and saying, Mike, you're running the operation. And he said to me, Mr. Stillman, Matt Nagy's my guy. I know him. I think he's a good coach. I think he got screwed with a bad general manager. He inherited a bad quarterback in Chicago. They have bad ownership there. It's a big market that's very volatile. Trust me, this guy can coach. I'd say, okay. And I think that's how the fan base should feel. I mean, I saw Tic Tac Titan yesterday, got up there and said, if Borgonzi hires Nagy, then I am out on Borgonzi. And I'm like, no. You can't go from, I trust Mike Borgonzi. In Borgonzi, we trust. Look at the draft, Jared. He crushed it. He's a great general manager. And then say, oh, no, he hired that coach? I'm out. Can't do that. Like when it came to Borgonzi and he got hired, I had the same feeling I've had about all these guys, which is, we'll see. I mean, you say good things at the press conference. Everybody says good things at the press conference. Brian Callahan said good things at the press conference. You get the job. Now let's see how you do the job. Again, we didn't really know how much he was doing the job. They signed Dan Moore in free agency. Adam Schefter reported that it was Chad Brinker that did that deal. So how much is he actually doing? I don't know. And neither do you, by the way. Well, now he's in charge. They didn't win one game more in Borgonzi's first year as the general manager, whatever that's worth. That's a red flag to me. Doesn't mean they can't get better. Floyd had a terrible first year when he took over the team. Now, I think that has a lot to do with the salary cap being implemented in the NFL at the time, and every good player that team had basically going away with the exception of Blaine Bishop. But again, it's a red flag to me that Mike Borgonzi didn't win any more games and that they won 3 games this past year. But it does not mean he's a bad general manager. I would not have drafted Cam Ward. That, again, if I'm looking at Borgonzi and I'm doing this fairly, that to me is the one that I'm like, okay, this is a problem because Mike Borgonzi has made it abundantly clear Cam Ward was his pick. And we know what was out there for the Giants. We know who was out there in free agency, who they didn't sign, who's going to the NFC Championship game. I told you people. But that was his call. Cam Ward, I'm in. And I was skeptical. But hey, everybody was saying good. Let's see. And I don't think we saw anything this year that proves that Cam Ward is going to be a franchise quarterback. Again, like with Borgonzi as a general manager, it doesn't mean he can't be. And we have seen guys improve. And Cam does apparently work hard and have the respect of his teammates. And he's got talent. But I'm skeptical on Cam. So for me, I look at Borgonzi and I'm already skeptical. He hires Matt Nagy. I think that would be what a good general manager does if he really believes in Matt Nagy, to say, no, I believe in this guy and I'm rolling with this guy. Then I'm fine with it. I don't see how you people can just lick this guy's bum and then all of a sudden he hires a coach that you don't like and now you're out. I don't understand that. So that's the first part on the Nagy front. And let me say this about the Matt Nagy hate. I think it's unwarranted. I'm not saying that Matt Nagy is a good coach because I don't know if Matt Nagy is a good coach or not. I didn't cover the Chicago Bears. And even then, that was his first opportunity. Who knows what he learned in that first opportunity when he went from Chicago back to Kansas City. I don't buy all the puff pieces from CBS and the puff piece from The Athletic that's like, Matt Nagy is a born-again virgin of a coach. I don't buy that stuff, but I do think that a guy can learn. And I also think 34-31, 2 trips to the playoffs in 4 tries, and a coach of the year is a lot better than Brian Callahan, which, again, I'm not comparing him to Callahan. Anybody's better than Callahan. I'm talking about whether or not you can build a contending team with him as the coach. I just don't know. So where I sit on the Nagy front is I think Matt Nagy has an okay resume. I think he's got the same resume as all these other retread coaches, maybe a little bit better. You know, he's got a better resume than Mike McDaniel because even though they have roughly the same record and they both went to the playoffs twice and they were both one and done in the playoffs, he was a coach of the year. McDaniel wasn't. McDaniel couldn't work along with Vic Fangio, and Matt Nagy could. And even though Tua stinks, Tua was better than the 2 quarterbacks that Nagy had in Chicago. He has a better resume than Arthur Smith. He has a better resume than Robert Saleh. He has a better resume than those guys. So I think it is unfair that you people have just decided Matt Nagy stinks and this organization is a total train wreck if they hire Matt Nagy, and that you are out on Mike Borgonzi, who knows Matt Nagy professionally, and you don't. I think that is unfair. That doesn't mean that I'm betting that it's going to be successful. That just means that I think it's unfair. So that's where I am on the Nagy front. I think on the Hafley front, because Jeff Hafley is one of the finalists, reportedly. He's taking the Dolphin job. Like, do we need to go in depth on that? I know PK put out a piece there saying the Dolphins can't hire him today, even though he is in the building in Miami, because they haven't met the satisfactions of the Rooney Rule yet. And that may be true or not. I haven't kept up who the Dolphins are interviewing. You can interview whoever the fuck you want, whenever the fuck you want to. If you have a deal with John Eric Sullivan and John Eric Sullivan has a deal with Jeff Hafley, then it's not like, hey, I've agreed to a 5-year, $25 million contract to coach the Dolphins, and I've agreed on how much money you're going to give me for the assistants, and we've agreed on what our vision for the future is. We shake on it. You go interview Raheem Morris, knock yourself out, and then I'll come back to it. I highly doubt Hafley would pull the Josh McDaniels and say, no, I'm going to Tennessee instead. So let's just go ahead and take Hafley off the board. I would be shocked at this point in time if Jeff Hafley does not end up as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So take him off the board. Now, Mike McCarthy. So let's talk about Big Mike here for a second. If you listen to the show on Friday, you know that I was very big on the resume of Mike McCarthy. I actually watched Hard Knocks from 4 years ago, the 2021 Hard Knocks, where they were still socially distancing and wearing masks and everything else because Mike McCarthy was the coach of the Cowboys. And I wanted to see what McCarthy was like in the little snippets they gave us behind the scenes. Now, with the Cowboys, the star of the show is Jerry, and there was a lot of Dak. And on Hard Knocks, there's always the 7th-round rookie out of Appalachian Tech that they follow around. And so I just fast-forwarded through that, and I just watched McCarthy. Seemed like a serious enough ball coach to me. Add that up with the fact that he's got a very successful resume. He's won a Super Bowl. He developed Aaron Rodgers. He made Dak Prescott better. I mean, I think McCarthy's got a really good resume. And as a Titan fan, I would be okay with Mike McCarthy as the coach. My dad and I yesterday, we went out to Costco. In fact, somebody actually said on Instagram, I saw you at Costco, I think with your dad. I wanted to come say hi, but I did. And I'm like, you should have come and said hi. But my dad and I went out to Costco yesterday, and we talked about Mike McCarthy. He would be totally on board with McCarthy as the coach. I would be totally on board with McCarthy as the coach. So yesterday, there was kind of this haze of, is this really the first interview for Mike McCarthy, or is this really the second interview? Easton Freeze at A to Z Sports reported that early in the process, Mike McCarthy went to dinner with Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi, and apparently the dinner went very well. Yesterday, Big Mike was in the building all day. And who else do we know is in the building? Amy. Remember, Amy's plane took off last week on Wednesday to come to Nashville, and they were planning on Thursday to go to Baltimore to interview Jim Harbaugh. I think deep down inside they knew they were never going to get Harbaugh. I think Amy's plan was to be in Nashville at the end of last week anyways. They say it was a first interview for McCarthy. It feels like a second interview. Again, the first interviews are with Borgonzi, Brinker, Ziegler, McKenzie, and some guy named Dave that they have in the front office from the Browns. I don't know who the fuck that is. Kaharski gets on my ass because I don't know who it is, but fucking I don't care who's sixth in command. But apparently Dave is part of the group. Well, if you're going to dinner with Brinker and Borgonzi, that's kind of the same as a Zoom interview, is it not? So he did that. Now he's in the building all day. Now, the reporting is coming out that the Steelers are reaching out to Mike McCarthy. McCarthy is from Pittsburgh. Again, McCarthy is an established coach. I have a hard time seeing the Steelers hiring Mike McCarthy only because the Steelers strike me, again, knowing what their organizational history is, they want a young guy who's going to be their coach for 20 years. So I have a hard time believing they're going to hire McCarthy, but I don't know. The one thing I'll say about McCarthy, and I've told you, his resume, I'm on board with McCarthy's resume. If they were to hire McCarthy today, the fans would love it. You know, at the beginning of this process, the day they fired Brian Callahan, if they did what you do in the NHL and sometimes in Major League Baseball, and I don't know if they do this in the NBA or not, but I think the coach in the NBA is completely irrelevant. But in the NHL, a team will fire the coach and then hire a guy the next day and give him a 4-year contract and say, okay, Johnny was the coach last week. Here's your new daddy, Peter Laviolette. We signed him to a 4-year deal for $3 million a year. He's our new coach. Okay. They don't do that in the NFL. But if they had done that the day that Brian Callahan got fired, and they said, we're firing Brian Callahan, we're not getting enough out of Cam, we're not building forward, Mike McCoy's going to take over on an interim basis, and Big Mike is coming in, and he's going to be the coach next year, which, again, you can't do because of the Rooney Rule. But if they had done that, I think it would have been like 65% anti-McCarthy. But because you all now are scared to death that Matt Nagy is going to be the next coach of the Titans, I think the Titans fan base has decided McCarthy, Big Mike, bring him on. We need him. Aaron Rodgers, Super Bowl. Dak Prescott, Tex Coast offense. You won't care about the fact that they got shellacked in that playoff game by the Green Bay Packers and Matt LaFleur. You're not going to care about the fact that it ended poorly in Green Bay. You're not going to care about any of that. You're not going to care about the fact that Aaron Rodgers treated Mike McCarthy with such disrespect over such a long period. You're not going to care about any of that. You're just going to be happy that Matt Nagy's not the coach. I don't think the Titans, should care what the fans think when it comes to hiring a coach. What the fans think is completely irrelevant. But if they do, the way to do this would be to say, okay, we've decided, we've interviewed, we're going with Mike McCarthy right now because the fan base would be so happy that it's not Matt Nagy if it ended up being Mike McCarthy. And again, I have no qualms with McCarthy. If it were up to me, just based off of what I know, which is nothing really other than what I've seen on TV and what you people know and things like that. If McCarthy ended up being the coach of the Titans, I'd be cool with it. And if I had to pick between McCarthy and Nagy, I'd pick McCarthy. And we had Matt Overton on the show. And Matt Overton, who played long snapper for the Cowboys, he said, hey, he and Bones Fossil, they were like this when it came to running the operation in Dallas. McCarthy is great at hiring assistant coaches. Like, look at his staffs. Guys like Kellen Moore. And I know he fired Kellen Moore, but he hired Kellen Moore. Well, I guess Kellen Moore was already there, but he had Kellen Moore on his staff. Dan Quinn got a head coaching job. I believe Joe Philbin was on his coaching staff, got a coaching job. He can hire assistants that then go off and get head coaching jobs. So, it felt, though, like that was a second interview with Amy there. I also wonder, when it comes to McCarthy, is he like the safety school in all of this? That the Titans, we're really going to cast a wide net. We're really going to, but let's get McCarthy in here. Let's do a full-on interview with McCarthy. We know what Chad thinks of McCarthy. We know what Reggie McKenzie thinks of McCarthy that have worked with him in Green Bay. We know what Bones Fossil, who worked with him in Dallas, probably thinks. Let's get McCarthy in here. Let's sit down with McCarthy. Let's woo him. Let's say, hey, what would your plan be? And just in case everything else fails, we can hire McCarthy. That's what it kind of feels like to me. That if Matt Nagy gets offered a better job, which he won't, but if Matt Nagy gets a better job, then let's hire McCarthy. If Robert Saleh gets another job, let's hire McCarthy. If all these other guys get jobs that we thought we might want, Hafley, Stefanski, Harbaugh, etc., then let's just hire Matt Nagy. McCarthy. That's what it feels like on the McCarthy front. It feels like they're going to hire Nagy. It feels like they've got Big Mike warming up in the bullpen just in case. The wild card in this, Amy. Again, if I owned the team, I want to make this very clear. Me, if I owned the team, I would let Mike Borgonzi pick the coach. I told you guys 2 years ago when I said it's time to blow it up and start over. It's time to move on from Vrabel. It's time to move on from Rand. And everybody called me racist because Rand had only been there for a year, but I knew Rand was incompetent. And with Vrabel, I felt like the toothpaste was out of the tube, and the disrespect between Vrabel and the ownership was too much. And I just felt like it was time, just blow it up, start over. Of course, the Titans didn't do that, but that's what I felt like they needed to do. And I said, I would hire Thomas Dimitrov, or I'd hire Mark Dominic, or I'd hire one of these general managers who I know is a smart guy who has led an organization, Rick Spielman in Minnesota. I'd hire one of these guys to be the general manager, and I would say it's your team. And at the time, one of the big pieces on the roster was Will Levis. And a lot of people thought Levis was a first-round pick that they took in the second round, and he was going to be the future of the franchise at quarterback. Amy thought that. I didn't. I said, hey, I've seen enough from Levis in 23 that if you make Levis the starter in 24, I don't have a problem with that. But I'd hire a new general manager, and I'd say to that new general manager, you tell me what you want to do at quarterback. Do you believe in Levis? If you don't believe in Levis, then let's start figuring out how we eventually move off of Levis. What do you want to do at coach? You want to hire that guy? Okay, he's the coach. So that's what I believe in. But that's not how Amy does business. And so I could see Mike Borgonzi wanting to hire Matt Nagy and Amy saying no. And I think the negative fan reaction, though I do not encourage this behavior because I think this is what stupid teams do. But I do think the negative social media reaction to the idea of hiring Matt Nagy might actually scare Amy from hiring Matt Nagy, even if Mike Borgonzi wants to hire Matt Nagy. And then you pivot to McCarthy. I do not believe in hiring a coach to get a fan base excited or to sell tickets, because I believe the way you sell tickets is by winning football games. So just go hire the best guy for the job. But it's easier said than done when you're asking your fans and your season ticket holders to pay thousands of dollars for PSLs. Now, the other thing we haven't talked about is Robert Saleh. There is something when it comes to Robert Saleh that the local people here just seem to think he is going to be the next coach of the Titans. Easton Freeze on the show said he thinks it's going to be Salah. TD has said he thinks it's going to be Salah. And again, those guys are in the building. They talk to people. I found it odd that they both said Salah when there is not a real connection between Salah and the front office. Borgonzi's never worked with Salah. Brinker's never worked with Salah. Ziegler's never worked with Salah. None of these guys, I don't think, have ever worked with Robert Saleh. And Robert Saleh was fucking terrible with the Jets, regardless of whether or not you want to admit that. I mean, he was terrible. Now, I know there's been some revisionist history about the fact that they were starting to turn things around. But I read the story in The Athletic. It put most of the blame on Woody Johnson. It put a lot of the blame on Aaron Rodgers. It did blame Robert Saleh. It said that Robert Saleh was too thin-skinned. Robert Saleh was too insecure. Robert Saleh was too worried about the moles in the organization and the leaks and everything else that he wasn't actually coaching the team. And that he and Zach Wilson, their relationship completely deteriorated. And that by no means absolved Saleh of blame. But I'm also willing to say maybe the Jets just stink. And anybody who coaches the Jets, whether it be the great Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick in his prime or whomever, would stink because it's the Jets and it's Woody Johnson. But I do find the fact that people think Saleh is going to be the coach, with him pretty much not checking any boxes other than the fact that he's been a head coach before. He's not an offensive coach. I guess he said he's going to call the plays. I don't know if the Titans care about that anymore. But I do think the fan base would get behind Saleh more than Nagy, even though I actually think that Nagy has a better resume in his first go-round than Saleh did. But people love Saleh. People love the 49ers. If you are attached to Shanahan and you're not fat, people think you're just a great coach no matter what. So I do find the Saleh thing interesting. I do not take Jonathan Gannon, who is yet to interview. I do not take him seriously as far as a head coaching candidate for the Titans is concerned. Maybe as a defensive coordinator. I hate this thing that fans do, where they're like, they're interviewing Brian Daboll to be OC. They're not interviewing Brian Daboll to be the head coach. And I'm like, well, doesn't the head coach pick the staff? So wouldn't that mean that if you're interviewing Jonathan Gannon to be DC, you'd want the head coach to interview Jonathan Gannon? Not necessarily the GM and Chad Brinker? But I disagree. Or I digress as far as Saleh is concerned. The one thing I do want to say on the Nagy front, again, I know I'm reading the comments. You guys hate Matt Nagy. The one thing I do want to say is this. If you trust Mike Borgonzi today, before he has hired Matt Nagy or before he has not hired Matt Nagy, If you trust Mike Borgonzi today, and Mike Borgonzi wants to hire Matt Nagy, should you not trust his judgment on that? Again, he knows Matt Nagy better than you do. He actually knows what it looks like when there's a confrontation with Matt Nagy involved. He knows what Matt Nagy learned in Chicago because Matt Nagy was in Kansas City and probably talked about it. He knows how much Matt Nagy did as far as Patrick Mahomes is concerned, as far as Andy Reid and the offense is concerned. He knows all of that. You don't know any of that. You weren't there. So if you trust Mike Borgonzi today and he makes a move, he trades for an offensive lineman, he drafts a defensive lineman, and you say, you know what? I trust Mike Borgonzi. Should you not trust Mike Borgonzi when it comes to Matt Nagy? Now, I don't trust Mike Borgonzi because I was very concerned by what I saw from the Titans last offseason. I was very concerned by the fact that they hired this general manager from the Chiefs, who has been nowhere else but the Chiefs. And again, I know guys will always say, I'm trying to do things the Titans way. I'm not trying to do things the Chief way. I want to do things the Titans way. But the truth is, when you hire a guy from Bill Belichick's Patriots, you want the Patriot way. When you hire a guy from Kansas City, you want to become Kansas City. That's just how it is. Indiana didn't hire a guy to be Nick Saban, but they hired a guy from the Nick Saban tree, and he is Nick Saban. That's what you want. When they skipped on Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold, and they overdrafted Cam number 1, in my opinion, that was a huge red flag to me. Because, again, I remember Mike Borgonzi getting the job and talking about how Alex Smith solidified the quarterback position. Kansas City was the worst team in the league. Scott Pioli gets fired. Romeo Crennel gets fired. Borgonzi stays on as a pro scout. John Dorsey comes in. Andy Reid comes in. And they passed on Geno Smith and E.J. Manuel in the draft. They had the number 1 pick. And they passed on them. And they said, we don't think these guys are franchise quarterbacks, so we're not going to take them. So they traded 2 second-round picks for Alex Smith. Alex Smith had been benched in San Francisco, and he was basically a 500 quarterback. His stats in his tenure in San Francisco and Sam Darnold's stats up until last year were almost identical. And I thought, well, if you're going to build this the Kansas City way, you're going to do what Kansas City did. You're going to go get your Alex Smith. You're going to trade the pick. You're going to build the roster around the veteran quarterback, and then you are going to strike when you see a young guy that you just love. And instead, the Titans overdrafted the quarterback to a team that had a head coach on the hot seat that the general manager didn't hire. And I'm like, that's what idiots do. I mean, I hope it works out for Borgonzi, but if I were a betting man, I'd bet against it. So I don't trust Mike Borgonzi today. Now, he's the general manager, and it's his call, and that's what he's paid to do. And I'm not telling him not to do his job. He should do his job. But I don't trust him today. If you trust him today, then you have to let him hire the coach he wants to hire. If you trust him. That's first thing. I do wonder why you people hate Matt Nagy so much. Like, why do you people hate Matt Nagy but don't hate Mike McDaniel? When, again, let's just pull up the resumes again. This is, and I know Stefanski, again, is off the board, but Nagy is 34-31 and 0-2 in the playoffs, and McDaniel is 35-33 and 0-2 in the playoffs. How do you hate one guy and not the other guy? We love McDaniel. We hate Nagy. Somebody lay that out to me. Like, I just don't understand that one. I'm fine with you not liking Matt Nagy, but then don't sell me on Mike McDaniel or Robert Saleh. That I kind of struggle with. And I'll say this too on the Saleh front. If Robert Saleh really wants the job, and I know these things are scheduled out and everything else, if Robert Saleh really wants the job, Robert Saleh, and he's got plenty of money, and I assume he's probably still getting paid by the Jets, Robert Saleh should have ponied up for a PJ and should have flown from Seattle to Nashville as soon as the game was over last night. And he should be like, you know what? I was supposed to do Zoom. Unfortunately, we got knocked out. I'm here in person. I have been told that Salah wants the job. So if Salah really, really, really wants the job, I don't think Stefanski wanted the job. I know Harbaugh didn't want the job. Salah, from what I've been told, he wants the job. He should have ponied up for a PJ and flown his ass here last night and said, I'm here. Let's do it in person. It's better than Zoom. But I don't know if he did that or didn't do that or offered to do that or whatever. And then finally, I haven't touched much on the Stefanski thing. I mean, yesterday I saw Stefanski was announced as a finalist, but that Stefanski was in Atlanta, and there was a lot of, what if they hire him in Atlanta? And again, I have not understood the Stefanski thing for a while. Mike McCoy beat Kevin Stefanski with a worse roster on the road this season, and Mike McCoy sucks. Think about that. So I haven't really understood the Stefanski thing. Again, he's skinny and good looking, and offensive coaches who are skinny and good looking for some reason people love. I don't get it, but that's just the rule. I do think Stefanski to Atlanta proved one thing. And the Hafley Miami thing, I think, is also kind of proving this. This is not a good job. It's hilarious because this time last week, all of the insiders were on television and they were all telling us how great of a job this was. I mean, they've got a new stadium. This is a great job. And Titans fans on Twitter were like, yeah, look at this. Jay Glazer says it's a good job. Diana Rossini says John Harbaugh loves Mike Borgonzi. This is a great job. Cap space. Cam Ward, a new stadium. Yes. John Harbaugh wasn't even interested in hearing your pitch. Kevin Stefanski lined up your interview after the job that he really wanted. And Jeff Hafley's doing the same thing. This is not a desirable job. The guy you're going to hire is a guy who doesn't have options. That's why Chris Shula and Clint Kubiak have said, nah, we're good. We're not going to waste our first chance on the crummy Titans with that quarterback who was overdrafted last year and that crazy-ass owner that fires you even if you win. Reality check time. Nobody with options wants to coach here. Now, that doesn't mean that this is going to be a bad job in the future. It doesn't mean you can't hire a good coach. It just means nobody with options wants to coach here. And that's okay. I'm not sure people with options want to coach Cleveland. Why would you? People with options would like to coach Baltimore. They are not clamoring to work for Amy Adams Strunk with a power dynamic that changes every year. Nobody wants that. This is not a good job. So again, you have to get it right when it comes to making the hire because you're only going to be picking from guys that nobody else wants, but that doesn't mean you can't get a good coach. Remember, the Colts interviewed and passed on Mike Vrabel in 2018. The Lions interviewed and passed on Mike Vrabel for Matt Patricia in 2018. So you can get a good coach, even if nobody wants your job. But give me a break on this. Oh, look, all the insiders said this is a good job. Yeah, and then Harbaugh said, I'm going to take the Giants job without it completely worked out how much power I have. I'm going to take that job before even hearing the Titans pitch because I have no interest in that shit job. And that Kevin Stefanski was over to Arthur, but please hire me before I have to go to Tennessee to use them as leverage. And Jeff Hafley's doing the same thing. All right. We'll get to your reaction. How a lot of you want to weigh in. Let's first, though, tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Hiller has been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, where they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. They'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporter of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. And again, they take great care of my home. They took great care of my home last week. Let them take great care of your home. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, let's get into the chat. I do love some of this stuff. Michael says, I think they didn't need to interview 20 people if they decided on Matt Nagy early. I said this at the beginning, that I thought when Amy Adams Strunk came out and said, Mike Borgonzi is leading the search, they knew who they were going to hire. And as is the case with anything, there's a, now look, if Vince Lombardi comes free, then maybe that'll change our opinion a little bit, and we'll interview everybody, but we know who we're going to hire. That's what I took that as. You know, I was actually 2 years ago listening to old Jared of the GM shows from when the Titans went from Mike Mularkey to Mike Vrabel. And I was listening to that because Floyd was kind of spelling out what a coaching search is like and what he would be looking for if he was in that spot as far as the coaching candidates and things are concerned. And I forget what I said, but he fired back at me. You know, the way he used to always kind of, you don't know shit. He basically was saying, if you understood how complex these discussions are and how secret these discussions are and how much planning goes into these discussions, then you wouldn't run your mouth and you would just, and I think there's something to that. I think the Titans knew who they were going to hire at the beginning of this. And they decided to interview every Tom, Dick, and Harry so they could make it look like, hey, we interviewed everybody. And after we interviewed everybody, Matt Nagy was the guy we had to have. The truth is now this is going to blow up in their face because it's going to look like, wait a minute, you interviewed all these other popular candidates and you hired Stinkbag? Which, again, is not what I believe, but that's what you believe. And that's what the fans are going to believe, and it's going to look bad. But I think that's why they interviewed everybody, because they knew who they were going to hire. Frenchie says, yep, be pretty pissed if they hire Nagy. Again, I'd get ready for it. Dre says, I hate that this is really happening. Again, how do you know Matt Nagy's such a bad coach? One person says, let me tell you what it's like when Amy listens to our half-idiotic fan base. You fire the great Mike Vrabel and you hire Brian Callahan. When you listen to the idiotic fan base, you let Rand cook. That's what happens. Again, just so, and I'm not saying all of you people, but some of you, just so we can highlight this, this is how stupid some of you people are. Remember after the 24 draft, J.C. Latham, Tavondre Sweat, the Titans reached on both of those, and people around the league were like, yeah, they reached. And people were like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Buck gave Rand Carthon a chef hat, and the fans stood up and applauded. And this is the most incompetent football person I've ever been around in my life, and I've been doing this for 15 years. The most incompetent. And so, again, how you feel before this, I don't, when you listen to this fan base, let Rand cook. I mean, again, I think it was the Twitter anger of the A.J. Brown trade that led Amy to firing John Robinson. And look, not every decision every general manager is going to make works, and there are going to be some big ones that even good general managers miss on. But he won 61% of his games, and they were in first place. I still don't understand it, but I think that was the fans kind of turning Amy's opinion. And I think the person that Amy probably listens to the most is her son-in-law. And her son-in-law is younger than me and is surely on social media. So when you all bitch about Matt Nagy, I assume he probably sees it. Link says Matt Nagy has been made the scapegoat his entire career when it wasn't really all on him. I don't know if I can agree with that or disagree with that. I think it is ridiculous to say the Chiefs' offense regressed this year because of Matt Nagy. I think the Chiefs' offense sucked this year because Travis Kelce is cooked. They have no wide receivers. They have no offensive tackles. And Pacheco got hurt at running back. So it was Mahomes, a guard, and a center. And I don't think that's Matt Nagy's fault. One guy says, I would take Nagy over McCarthy. I think the league has passed McCarthy by. So I had to text Paul, and I don't even know if Paul texted me back, but I texted Paul because I listened to Paul's podcast the other day, and he was talking about McCarthy. And he said, oh, McCarthy's a dinosaur. And I'm like, how? Like, what makes Mike McCarthy a dinosaur? Well, Mike McCarthy doesn't totally embrace analytics. Okay. Brian Callahan did. You want Brian Callahan back? The last season where Dak played over half the games under Mike McCarthy was 2023. Dak got hurt, played 8 games in 2024. By the way, Mike McCarthy, Cooper Rush was 9-5 as his starting quarterback in Dallas. It's pretty good. But Dak Prescott, the last full season he played, 2023, led the NFL in QBR. How has the game passed him up? That was when McCarthy took the offense from Kellen Moore and said, we're going to run my offense, the Tex Coast offense. We're going to run that. And Dak led the league in QBR. And the Cowboys were the number 2 seed in the NFC. How is that the game passing McCarthy by? How is he a dinosaur? My issue with McCarthy is there have been times where I felt like McCarthy's teams were not prepared to play. I did not feel like they were prepared to play in that playoff game against the Packers in 2023. And I was very appalled by the 2021 playoff game at home against San Francisco when Dak took off and slid with no timeouts and didn't know the rule that the referee had to touch the ball before he could spike it. And if the quarterback doesn't know the rules, that's on the coach. So that's my knock on McCarthy. But that's still a lot better than some of these other coaches. Kevin says, so what? If Darnold sucked here and won 3 games, you would be the same with the 4 extra draft picks. Well, we don't know if Darnold would have sucked here. Guess what? It's hard for me to believe he would have sucked when he didn't suck in Seattle and he didn't suck in Minnesota and he didn't suck his last year in Carolina in 2022. Go look up the stats. He was good. He was good. And I will tell you that I think the Tennessee Titans would have won 9 games with him as the quarterback, and there's no way to know if they would have or wouldn't have. All we can go off of is what did happen. And what did happen is you won 3 games, and there's a giant question mark at quarterback and a giant question mark at coach, and you don't have the resources to rebuild your roster, which is a total disaster. And the guy you were too good for, and Tom Brady was too good for this guy too. The guy you were too good for is in the NFC Championship game on a team that didn't make the playoffs last year. One person says, Amy can't be trusted not to meddle with the selection. Agreed. But we just don't know how. You know, the one thing I'll say about Amy is that when it comes to football decisions, with the exception of the Robinson thing, and we'll never really know how involved Vrabel was on the Robinson thing. Coach Bob Shoop was on my show when all that happened. And Coach Shoop was like, you know, I listened to Vrabel's press conference, and I have a hard time believing that Vrabel didn't know that was coming. So who knows what Vrabel was or wasn't in the Robinson stuff. But when you're Amy's flavor of the month, she tends to listen to you. Like, it does sound like Brian Callahan was Rand Carthon's pick. It does sound like Mike Borgonzi was Chad Brinker's pick. So if Borgonzi is the flavor of the month, and it looks like he is, and he goes to Amy and he says, I want to hire this guy, then I can see Amy saying, well, I have hired Mike. He's the flavor of the month. I trust Mike. Let's go hire that guy. But I also could see Amy freaking out and being like, we got to sell tickets to the new stadium. What are we going to do? Handel says, collaboration has ruined this franchise. The truth is, Amy Adams Strunk made a huge mistake running off Mike Vrabel, and it'll take years before we get somebody as good as him. I mean, you could get Mike McCarthy right now. And who's to say that Mike Vrabel's better than Mike McCarthy? I hate when people do stuff like this. We won't win 4 games if Robert Saleh is the coach. You don't know that. Like, I didn't want to draft Cam Ward. I didn't. I thought Cam Ward was a mid-first round talent who needed to sit on the bench and refine his mechanics and learn how to play quarterback in the NFL before being stuck out there. I think he needs to be quarterback on a good team with a good coach, and I was not sold on any of that with this team. But that doesn't mean that I knew Cam Ward wasn't going to be that good when they drafted him. That's just what I thought. When you people say things like, McCarthy has reached his ceiling, how do you know that? Like, based off of what? That's the kind of stuff I don't understand. TDG, do we really believe Darnold won that game yesterday, or was it the special teams and defense? Come on. I said, if he gets to the NFC Championship game, you got to give him his due. He has beaten, in consecutive weeks, the Rams, the 49ers, the Rams, the Panthers, playoff team, the 49ers, and the 49ers. Give me a break. Kyle says, Cam had a damn good rookie season given the circumstances. You are blinded by hate. Disagree. I think you are using the circumstances as an excuse and are not calling it how it is, which is Cam had an okay rookie year. He had an okay rookie year. Had a bad year for a quarterback who's not a rookie. Had an okay year for a rookie quarterback. Hold on. Let me see this. What do we have here? PK texted me reporting. What? And I don't know what he means. Did something happen? Am I missing something? Who knows? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go watch the great Mike Vrabel. If any news breaks, we'll be back live. Thank you for our special Stillman and Company edition to get you ready for kickoff and everything else. And we shall see what happens with the Titans coaching search. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Thank you to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We love them. They take great care of me. They can do the same for you, Stillman and Company. If we're not live with some breaking news, we will be live tomorrow in 24 hours at 2 o'clock. Enjoy the games, and way to go, Sam Darnold, for the rest of the